They told us power belongs only to superpowers. They told us distance meant safety. They told us civilian ships scattered across the oceans were untouchable. That illusion has just collapsed. What you're about to hear shatters the myth of control. A nation under siege has learned how to strike anywhere, without fleets, without bases, without permission. Steel giants are burning. Ports are on edge. And the world's most powerful countries are suddenly confronting a terrifying truth. Their systems are far more fragile than they ever believed.
Number two, the Ukrainians have demonstrated that they're perfectly capable of taking some of their drones, loading them in the back of pickups or into shipping containers, taking them to a different part of the world completely, and launching them. So, in recent weeks, they have upped their attacks on the Shadow Fleet and most recently took out a pair of Shadow Fleet tankers that were in the Black Sea. But over the weekend, we saw attacks on patrol ships in the Caspian Sea, which is nowhere near Ukraine. And they even almost sank a vessel in Rostov-on-Don, which is a Russian port just off the Black Sea, and then disabled a Shadow Fleet vessel off the coast of Libya in international waters. So the Ukrainians are showing very clearly that you don't have to be a superpower to use drones against civilian tankers.
What Zeihan lays out is terrifying in its simplicity. Ukraine has turned mobility and ingenuity into a global weapon. By quietly moving drones across borders and launching them far from front lines, it is proven that geography no longer shields critical assets. Ships once thought safe, anchored in distant seas, neutral waters, even friendly ports, are now exposed. This isn't just a battlefield tactic. It's a warning. Modern power no longer requires massive navies or overwhelming fleets. It requires precision, patience, and nerve. What Peter Zeihan has revealed is not merely a shift in warfare, but a signal. One that power no longer sits safely behind borders, oceans, or distance. That warning has now stopped being theoretical. It has become brutally real. Because the consequences of losing control don't stay at sea. They rise into the air. And right now, the skies above Russia's heartland are no longer Russia's to command. What we are witnessing is historic. The airspace over Moscow, and in fact much of European Russia, is no longer secure. This isn't happening near the front lines. It isn't confined to border regions. It's unfolding at the very core of the Russian state, its most important airports, in its most protected cities. Every single day, at least 200 flights are being canceled in Moscow alone. Not delayed, canceled, erased from the board. Multiply that by 5 days, because this disruption is not a one-off. That's roughly 1,000 canceled flights in the capital alone. Add in other regions, other cities, and smaller airports forced to shut down their airspace entirely, and the number climbs into the thousands across Russia. And the timing makes it even more devastating. This is happening during the holiday season, the most important travel period of the year. This is when wealthy Russians leave Moscow and St. Petersburg in waves. When elites, oligarchs, criminals close to power, and members of the regime's inner circle expect comfort, mobility, and escape. New Year celebrations. Christmas by the old calendar. Family trips and luxury vacations. All shattered. Instead of boarding planes, they stand in terminals staring at departure boards that suddenly mean nothing. Instead of champagne at foreign resorts, they hear air raid alerts, distant explosions, and the grinding realization that the war has followed them home. And perhaps the most astonishing part, international media barely talks about it. Imagine this happening in France or Iceland or China. Thousands of flights canceled for days. Airports shut down. Airspace restricted. Governments would be forced to respond publicly. Leaders would address their nations. Headlines would dominate the global news cycle. Yet in Russia, the regime pretends everything is under control. Everything is according to plan. If this is a plan, then it is a plan to dismantle the country from within, because the chaos isn't limited to aviation. As Russia loses control of its skies, critical military infrastructure deep inside the country is being neutralized with terrifying precision. In the Lipetsk region, a major oil depot was struck, a facility supplying fuel not just locally, but to military units in Tambov and Voronezh. This was not symbolic. It was logistical. Fuel is the bloodstream of any military. Cut it, and the entire system weakens. In the same region, facilities tied to drone battery production for naval and aviation use had already been destroyed. Now the depots that kept those systems running are being eliminated as well, step by step, layer by layer. Then there's a massive weapons arsenal in the Kursk region. The explosions there didn't last minutes. They continued through the night. And despite the scale, the most important outcome is this. Countless innocent lives were saved. Every destroyed shell, missile, or round of ammunition is one that will never be fired at civilians. This is not chaos for chaos's sake. This is systematic demilitarization. All of this is unfolding while Russia steadily loses control of its airspace. By the end of 2025, Russians were already experiencing flight disruptions several times a month. But now, at the beginning of 2026, the situation has escalated dramatically. Control over the skies above Moscow and much of European Russia is no longer guaranteed. This marks a massive shift in the war, one of the clearest demonstrations yet of the weakness of Russian air defenses and the broader military system. They never prepared to defend their own territory. They believed intimidation would be enough. They believed fear would force surrender in days. They believed they could strike without consequence and never face retaliation at home. For years later, dozens of Russian cities are dealing with paralyzed airspace. Flights are canceled for 5 consecutive days, or more. Major airports shut down. Smaller regional airports close entirely as drones pass overhead en route to legitimate military targets. The ripple effect spread across the entire country. And this isn't just an inconvenience. It's a psychological collapse. Millions of Russians are discovering something they once mocked. War is unbearable when it disrupts your own life, when it ruins your plans, when celebrations turn into anxiety, when explosions replace fireworks, when GPS jammers activate in Moscow itself, breaking navigation systems and turning luxury lifestyles into chaos. There are countless videos of fur-clad elites unable to travel, unable to move, unable even to orient themselves properly as signals vanish. It's surreal. But this is what war looks like when it comes home. This is a direct result of cheering for destruction elsewhere. An illusion of Russia as a superpower is evaporating in real time. This is a nuclear-armed state whose capital cannot guarantee safe air travel. A country that projected strength, dominance, and control now exposed as fragile, reactive, and unprepared. The so-called special operation has done what no external enemy could do faster. It has hollowed Russia out from the inside. The economy is strained. The banking system shows clear signs of stress. Public frustration is growing. Even those who supported the war in 2022 are now feeling its cost directly. Among them are thousands of Russians stranded this holiday season, angry, stuck, and increasingly aware that there is no exit ramp. There is no plan B. The leadership is surrounded by lies, feeding itself comforting illusions, while reality collapses outside the Kremlin walls. Each year, the situation inside Russia worsens. Each year, control slips further. And as 2026 unfolds, the cracks are no longer hidden. They are visible in the skies above Moscow itself. This is not the end, but it is a signal that power built on intimidation eventually turns inward, a reminder that war always returns to the place it was launched from, and proof that the fastest way to dismantle an empire is to let it keep making its own choices. The skies tell the story.